swept away and disappeared under the water. So helicopters searching there, and unfortunately it's not the first flood rescue that we've seen in the last 24 hours. There's been 5 of them, and the SES said today that it is concerned because obviously as this weather front continues and then that massive amount of water begins to move through the river system, flooding is going to become a real issue in the next few days, and they're very concerned about people entering floodwaters. Here's what they had to say.
The fact that we're already getting flood rescue calls this early into the incident and the situation will deteriorate in the next 24 to 48 hours, I can't be clear not to do that, and that's why our key message has been to relocate and now evacuate early before the situation worsens.
And Sarah, there's a critical water shortage emerging around the Tweed. What's been happening there?
Look, there are now strict emergency water restrictions in place in 4 locations across the Tweed, Joe, and that's because the situation with the power cuts is starting to affect the water treatment plants and the pumping stations up there. Essentially, it means that the only available water is that which is already in the pipes and the reservoirs around that area. And so the people in those 4 areas which are affected, in particular Yukai, Tyalgum, Terranora and West Cudgeon, are being told only to use water for essential purposes. So that's essentially drinking, cooking and essential hygiene, really just hand washing. The reason for that is obviously there is concern. They don't want them to run out of water at a time when they really need it. And that warning is being asked, for people to cooperate with across the whole of the Tweed, because there are concerns again that will only worsen. And that's of course because of the situation with the power cuts. We've now got nearly 40,000 homes and businesses across the north of the state that have not had power, and the authorities today were saying unfortunately that is likely to only increase, and it will likely be a number of days before power can be restored to most of those locations, because it simply will not be safe for energy workers to be out fixing power. Now, the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has said that generators will be made available from the national stockpile as soon as it's safe to do so, but he has said that will not be enough to keep the lights on in all of those locations. So as this weather continues, as the rain continues, they are expecting to see more power cuts, and of course more issues with communications towers going down. So this is really the issue for the people up in the north of the state as they look towards the worst of the weather hitting overnight and into tomorrow morning, is being able to stay in touch with what's going on the ground. So they are being urged as well as to evacuate, but also to prepare with things like battery operated radios so that they can keep across the latest information if they are unable to see on their phones, check their check websites and apps, as they so often do, to stay in touch when these sorts of things happen.
Okay, Sarah Garrethy there in Sydney. And Craig Huff is a cattle farmer from Burringbar in New South Wales, about half an hour from Byron Bay, and he joins us now. Craig, g'day. So how have things been for you over the last 24 hours there?
Yeah, the guys down on the floodplain obviously stand to be fairly heavily impacted as they were in 2017 and 2022. Some of them have been able to get approvals to build flood mounds from the local government here, but some of them have struggled and not been able to do that. And with the flood mounds, that gives them the option in these kind of events to shift all the machinery and some livestock and pets and things.
Well, he's boring, so I'll just say good day and welcome to my second Cyclone Alfred report. Once again, left the front door propped open all day. You might not hear me for a bit stronger wind, but other than that, it's not too bad still. We are 6 hours after the first report. I won't be making another one because in a couple of hours it'll go dark, and I don't think this little camera does any good filming in the dark. Look, I think you could have seen some birds then. They're still flying around. Look at them, yes. There are the birds. They're still going. They look a bit frantic, but maybe they know something's going on. But anyway, sun's setting over there. We usually see great sunsets, but we don't usually have lots of cloud here in sunny Queensland. Now it's cloudy. this report should be a lot shorter than the first. But we're going to probably have a reasonable night without too much fuss. It's not looking too bad at all. I'll go back in and... oh, here we go.
And the core of the system, which is just around that centre there, it's just starting to push onto the Gold Coast and the far north coast of New South Wales. All right, here are some of the most notable observations we've seen today. Cape Byron, a gust of 120 kilometres per hour. Off Brisbane, we've had waves, that was actually yesterday, of 16.9 metres. And in the 48 hours to 9 a.m, more than 400 millimetres has fallen at Dorrigo. And because we've had 3 consecutive days now of severe weather, well, the impacts are being felt. Severe coastal winds on the north coast of New South Wales. And by 9 o'clock this morning, already over 100 millimetres, the blue there, much of the mid-north coast, northern rivers, and also around the Gold Coast. Okay, here's the radar of the last few hours. You can clearly see the bands of heavy rain spinning clockwise around the centre. The absolute heaviest rain is just to the south of the eye, and that's what's going to be pushing onto the coast over the next few hours. But already since 9 a.m, well, we've had some big falls. Casino 83 millimetres and Grafton 71 millimetres since 9 a.m. Now we're going to have a look at the flood warnings. They are numerous, minor, moderate and major flood warnings for at least a dozen rivers now along the north coast of New South Wales and also in southeast Queensland, plus a flood watch which also includes now the northern ranges of New South Wales. And just the final observations now that we've seen so far, today's maximum winds, Evans Head 100 kilometres, Coolangatta 100 and 120k now gusted Byron Bay.
And how will the weather evolve for the remainder of today and tonight as Alfred nears the coast?
Well, it certainly is critical over the next 24 hours in terms of the wind and also the surf. So there is the centre moving over the Moreton Bay Islands overnight and then probably late tomorrow morning perhaps making it to the mainland, but weakening as the system starts to interact with land. So it'll probably still be a Category 2 when it's moving over the islands, but perhaps when the centre of it moves over the mainland, it may have been downgraded to a Category 1. Now, just to the south of the eye is where you might see destructive winds around the northern part of the Gold Coast overnight tonight, and also some of those islands, Stradbroke Island, Norton Island, for example. But then further south, damaging wind gusts, not quite destructive, right down to northeast New South Wales. And the severe weather warnings which are in place are also, of course, for flash flooding. So let's talk about that rain, because that will be the biggest impact for most areas. There's the heaviest falls pushing onto the coast overnight tonight, around the north coast of New South Wales and the Gold Coast in particular. That's the first area that could see the life-threatening flash flooding, 250 millimetres in a 6-hour period. So over the next 24 hours or so, Joe, we're going to start to see some of the worst impacts pushing onto the coast.
And how long will that heavy rain linger? Because as you pointed out, Alfred has taken a bit of a meandering path over the last couple of days. Will it kind of continue to be unfortunately slow and that means more rain, or will it pick up a bit of pace?
It will stay slow moving, and that means at least 48 hours of torrential rain. So as we move through Saturday, the winds and the surf, they'll start to abate, but for many areas the rain will still be increasing. So here is the forecast rain as we go into Saturday afternoon. Because it shifts slightly north, that's when Brisbane, again the Gold Coast, far northern New South Wales, torrential falls, and now very heavy rain continues on Sunday. Hundreds of millimetres of rain on Saturday and Sunday alone. And when you put it together, you're talking about totals well over half a metre in many areas. Now, eventually the system will start to gather some pace. As we move from Sunday to Monday, the remnants of the system won't be up there anymore, but we'll start to see that rain spreading down. So even Sydney could get some heavy rain by the time we hit Monday. But if we just have a look at the totals we expect altogether between now and Tuesday, well, it's an average of about 500 millimetres near the border. But Joe, as we've seen many times from previous events, you get those localised totals much higher than the average. I'm sure somewhere we'll get close to 1 metre from the system.
And Tom, just a technical point that you might be able to help us with because you're an expert in the field. With those cyclone track maps that the Bureau puts out that they're updating every hour now, there's a ring of destructive winds, or like a darker colour ring of destructive winds. Where it's sitting now, that's quite substantial, but where it has the cyclone as still as a Category 2 just near those Bay Islands at about 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, that destructive wind circle is substantially smaller. So yeah, can you talk us through that? And is it the case that the destructive wind area decreases significantly?
That question went too long. That's enough for me. Bye for now. Stay safe.